Your refrigerator has more safety and security regulations on it than your operating system on your computer. We haven't solved basic cybersecurity.
No, we haven't.
Right? Now we're going to layer this very powerful decision-making capacity where we're going to put it on a super vulnerable space. Threats don't ask for permission. It's a continuous space of challenge.
Richard Harknett has spent decades studying what happens when power, technology, and conflict collide. He's advised the US government on cyber strategy, helped shape how nations think about digital deterrence, and now serves as director of the School of Public and International Affairs at the University of Cincinnati. Where others see cybersecurity as a technical problem, Richard argues it's a human one, and that artificial intelligence is accelerating change faster than societies are prepared to absorb it.
So we don't have a strategy. We don't have a tech strategy in this country.
Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. With me is Richard Harknett. He is the Director of Policy for Cyber at the University of Cincinnati. He's a man of many, many talents. He brings together policymakers, academia, innovators, and researchers. And trust me, those are a lot of different bureaucracies to bring together. So he's a man of many talents. It's a lot of work. And we're talking about a subject that should keep you up at night. We're talking about cybersecurity. And so if you want to know the threats that are out there, why you should care, why it matters for America, why it matters no matter who you are, this is your episode. We might scare you a little bit, but being aware is better than being unaware. So that's our hope that you gain from this. As always, I'd like to say we have about 900 followers, but we have many more people that watch and listen to the show. In order for us to take the full message of disruption, we ask, if you're watching us here on YouTube, take the time to please subscribe, even comment every now and then. That helps us keep the disruption and disrupting for good so more people can be empowered to learn about technology. We hope to see you. And as always, keep disrupting. So with me, Richard Harknett. Richard, it's good to have you on the show, brother.
It's great to have you be here with you, Rob. But I think you just eliminated my cocktail party invites. You know, like, hey, this guy's just going to scare the hell out of you. Don't invite him. But no, I totally agree with you. You know, these are important topics that affect us all. And so thanks for giving me a chance to chat with you.
All right. So you started off at the which college? The College
of Arts and
Sciences. Walk me through how a man that starts off at the College of Arts and Sciences walks his way into cybersecurity and policy. How did that story happen?
Yeah, no, it is actually an interesting segue. A point in this story where I find myself down at Georgia Tech at a conference, and there's about 150 computer scientists, engineers, and I'm like literally the only social scientist in the room, to the point where the organizers at the end said, can you get up on stage and just explain what the hell you're doing here? Right. So that's how, and we're talking early 90s here, the intersection of thinking about cybersecurity and social science, strategic studies, policy, it just wasn't happening. And it's been a slow roll for that. But my entry into it was actually before probably a lot of your listeners were alive or born, late 1980s. Early 90s, my work is focused on nuclear weapons and how we deal with deterrence and all of that type of stuff. And I came up with a different model of thinking about it. That's a story for another podcast. But did a little work for the Department of Defense, and they said, hey, it's pretty interesting. We got this thing called a browser. Not sure whether it's going to become a big thing. But if it did, what's the implications for security?
Sure.
So I kind of applied the work that I was doing and came back and said, yeah, we're in trouble. Like the way we think about security, the way we've been thinking about it for 70 years doesn't map to a network computing environment. I didn't have the answer to what the solution was, right. But at that point, to use your term, I saw disruption, and we were going to have to disrupt the way we thought about security, how we organize for security, and the capabilities that we brought to the table. The problem was, I'm saying this in the very early 90s, and then everybody started making money on the internet, right? So we have the .com, boom. And myself and, just very few other people are like, yeah, that doom and gloom kind of thing, like
right.
This is okay, but this is going to challenge us on the security side.
Absolutely. And you were right about that.
As it turned out, yeah.
You were right. And I say this, Richard, because this is a good intersection. So you mentioned a few things that I actually think have parallel to what's happening right now in this current moment that we find ourselves in here in 2025. We had to redesign and reimagine and rethink what security looked like when it came to cybersecurity, because we were moving into this online presence that we moved into. So you brought up the 90s, and I always like to say history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So when I look at where we are, you brought up looking at reimagining security. You started off with nuclear, and I have a plug for that too. But you also talked about how we have to reorient ourselves, reimagine what security looks like across the board. And of course, you were right. I feel we're at a similar moment that could be even more exponential. I've often said the next 5 years are going to be more disruptive than the last 50, given generative AI, given likely quantum computing and what's happening here. So thinking about that, learning from what you see in the past, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for threats, and what should the pivot in our minds be like to be prepared for as individuals and as organizations as we look at AI and cybersecurity?
Yeah, no, that's. I think you're absolutely right, Rob. There's these times in history, right, that we have in history books, the Dark Ages, and that gets like now.
You're really going to your professor bag
Yeah,
now.
I am. But it'll get a page.
Right.
It's a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
Right. People were doing lots of things. They were living on this planet. But it wasn't an interesting time. It wasn't a time that actually changed the trajectory. So it just gets a page in a history book. But then you open up a history book in Industrial Revolution. That's a whole chapter. Right?
Yeah.
Because that created a massive socioeconomic, political shift in the way we organize society. And I'm in the camp that suggests that this next technological step function, it's not incremental. We're going to step function off of algorithms and compute
describe
power.
what a step function is for the layman.
Technology continues to move. It improves typically incrementally. But there are these times where you get this confluence of lots of different factors. And in this case, it's the math that's behind algorithms and massive compute power in the form of these new people hear about the AI chips and things of this nature. We're bringing those things together, and they are going to give us a leap, a big step up in what we are able to throw at it in terms of complexity.
Yes.
And so we have really big, hard problems in society, whether it's on health, whether it's on the way people should be educated, how better we can improve education, what are new job opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to be in a state where we can take massive, massive amounts of information that we've accumulated throughout human history,
yes,
and bring that together and gain insights at scale. Right? The scale and scope of information processing. Humans are like really good information processors. Like it's an amazing thing, our brains. But we have a limitation of how much we can consume in a 24-hour period. These algorithms don't have a consumption problem.
No.
Right? They don't get full. Right?
No.
They can just churn and churn and churn and churn at tremendous speed. So we can get scale and scope and actually not have to wait years, decades, centuries for big, big change. So we're going to be in a period of really compressed change. We've always had change in human history, but this is going to be a period of compressed change. So the Industrial Revolution, big dislocation, big disruption, but it took some time.
Yeah.
So we had time to absorb it. And I think what's the most fascinating, the biggest challenge we're going to face is the fact that we're going to have to deal with change in a very compressed time frame.
Yes, and I think so. I want to dive into that. I'd like to dive into the security concerns.
Yeah.
But I want to take it back a little bit. Like I feel one of the biggest problems we have when it comes to algorithms is not new.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that we have the algorithms are really creating perceptions of people's mind of reality, right? Through social media and other things. I feel one of our biggest challenges isn't necessarily those things that you said, not that they're not important. I feel it's our ability to agree as society about what facts are,
Well,
right? And
so yeah, so I agree with you
so
at that
I have a
fundamental
question.
level. Yeah,
I have a question.
yeah.
So when we can't, like, what do we do with the threat of AI there when we know it has the ability to tell us that we are right about everything when we could be wrong?
Mhm.
How does that also inform how we think about security? Because I see multiple kind of paths there.
Yeah, so I'll tie what I was saying to
Okay,
that
go ahead.
question, and I think there's not much space between us,
Okay.
because the way you develop an understanding of some complex problem or something that's right in front of you is to reflect on it.
Yeah.
So when we have shades of truth, the thing that enables us to be able to pull ideas out from a lot of falsehoods
Yes.
typically has been time to reflect on it,
Mm.
time to bring evidence to bear, to
Yes.
bring expertise to bear, right? So the reason I went to this fundamental issue about compressed time is I think it explains a lot of the challenges that we're going to see.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
So you've just identified a critical one,
Correct.
and that is, how do you manage society when truth, if you will, or at least consensus,
Yes.
right, is so fluid, to the point where we can't latch on to something. And the algorithmic space that we're in, whether it's on the social media platforms, whether it's in our workplace where we're going to a large language model like ChatGPT
Right.
and saying, "Oh, you know what? Can I get this information? Oh, wow, that's a great summary, right? I'll just use that."
Yeah.
And so that has another effect on your problem. If we don't reflect, we can't take falsehood and truth and compare them, right, without reflection, right? But how do we actually, what's behind these things? You have to have a little deep thinking. These things don't encourage
No.
deep thinking,
They
right?
encourage action.
Tech right now is about convenience, and it's convenience to the point at which it's putting decision makers in a really, really tight box, information box. So we've heard about this, phenomenon of being in a point where I go to my friends group, and all I hear are things that I want to hear. So
That
the
reinforce
echo
whatever I wanna hear.
people talk about an echo chamber, right? I think it's a deeper problem, and this gets to your issue, is that not only do we not have reflection, but we don't actually have critique.
Nope.
We don't actually have the time to discern, well, wait a second, you know, that's not solid, right?
Right.
That's not true. So the large language models, this first iteration of algorithmic impact,
Yeah.
I've been teaching for 34 years, right? I got one maxim. Students are like water. They'll go to the point of least resistance,
Yes.
right? So,
It's just like people.
yeah, right.
That's people.
So we have to structure education to be challenging.
Yes.
And that challenge has to say it's okay to be critical, not, hey, you're wrong,
Right.
but reflective of saying,
How did you come
hey,
to that
how did you
conclusion?
come to that conclusion, right? And
Yes.
ask that question. If we get really, really good summaries of, we allow the AI to summarize a whole bunch of different articles.
Right.
Let's just assume it does a good job. Like there's whole problems of hallucination and not
Right.
getting it right. But let's even assume that it's a good summary. If I don't go beyond the summary in my thinking, then your problem becomes even more exacerbated, right? Because now I'm losing the skill
Yeah, that's true. But it feels like, Richard,
to be critical.
Richard, it feels like that's happening some, right?
Oh, I think that's the path
So-
we're on, and
so-
unless we arrest it.
So that's my question. What does arresting it look like? What
Yeah.
does that look like for education? What's the framework for approaching policy on something like this?
So we right now, so we don't have a strategy. We don't have a tech strategy in this country. I
No, we
don't think there's most countries don't have a tech strategy.
China does.
They do, but it's a different form of government.
Yes,
right?
but it's a fact.
But so I'll rephrase. So I don't
yes.
think any democracies have a great
Okay, yes.
tech, because we have, and there's good reasons to use the market, the free market, to be an engine of innovation.
Right.
Absolutely. So you don't want to box off possibilities. That's great. But there's no directionality to this.
I agree.
Right? So when we talk about strategy, strategy is anchored on a place you want to be at the end. And then you figure out the
Yes.
resources and means by which you want to get there.
I completely agree.
And right now, what we're doing is this free-for-all bottom-up approach. There's got to be a point at which we say, we've got a good base here of what algorithmic agency is going to look like in the next 5 years. Let's take a point to reflect on this, right? And say, what direction do we want to go for the American people?
That's exactly right.
Do we want to make and you can have different objectives.
Yes.
Right? Most people want to have more wealth.
Yes.
Well, there's a pathway by which we leverage this for more wealth. But that might, but wealth for whom?
Yes.
Right? Which is a socio-political question, right? And if right now it's wealth for people that hold stock in the companies and own the companies, it's not clear right now that we have a policy that's going to drive us towards work.
Yeah.
Right. So if people don't have jobs and therefore don't have income at the macro level, then this thing is not a wealth generator for society. It's a wealth generator for a particular part of society.
Yeah.
But that's a policy decision that we have to start to have a conversation about. There's tax policy that can drive this. There's regulatory policy that can drive it.
And if I can, Richard,
Yeah.
I also think there are a lot of other questions too. The economic one is something people obviously think about, and it's very central. And I agree with all your sentiment that we have to think about, what type of society we want to build. We had to do this with the Industrial Revolution,
Mhm.
and looking at history, I mean, we eventually got it right, but not without a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean,
look.
we went through 2 world wars. We went through, there was literally people were saying, well, maybe the German model is the better model when Nazism was on the rise. Like people
Well,
like
that's
to
why it rose that way. Yeah.
Exactly right. So like I think we have to understand the Industrial Revolution, like you said, took time. And the question is, did we learn from those lessons? And if we did, hopefully we learn better. And the second question is, there's a lot of questions, going back to what you said earlier, there's a lot of questions we have to answer, that we have to think about when it comes to AI and security and how we function as society. Like, are we okay with AI functioning and pretending to be humans?
Mhm.
Are we okay with AI as counselors? Are we okay with a digital ownership by a few people and entities when that's going to be your interest into society? Like, what does that balance look like? And my concern, right, with policymakers on all sides with this is that most are illiterate when it comes to any type of basis of understanding technology, even at its fundamental level, right?
Yeah.
They can't usually, if you talk to them about algorithms, they really can't really even, their eyes glaze over. But I believe this is one of the most central issues of our time, right? From not only how we become more competitive, but what's the function for society. So I agree with you. Like, so I guess I like to reframe the narrative to bring up some things you said.
Yeah.
You said threats don't wait for permission, right?
Mhm.
You said that often.
Right.
What threats do you see with AI, and what steps can we take? Maybe not as society, because maybe we're going to be a ways away from, and I think we are. I'm just going to just bite the bullet of reality,
Yeah.
right? We're some ways away from America at least having a direction on what they want to do in terms of policy. But what can individuals do? What can the parent do to make sure that their children are not losing their critical thinking skills or not going down rabbit holes? What can we do to protect our elderly from deep fakes with fake voices that sound like that are just like me, but are leading people towards, giving away their money or losing their security? Like, what practical advice can we give people in the age of AI right now?
Yeah. So I think the most practical advice is, do you have to move this fast? Like whatever moment that you're in, just pause a little bit, right? So there's an awareness issue. So what you're talking about, so there's two intersections of cyber and AI that keep me up at night, right?
Just two?
Yeah, just the big one. These are the big buckets, right? The one bucket is that this algorithmic power is resting on a incredibly vulnerable to exploitation system, right?
Yeah.
Cyberspace is a space in which technology is easily exploited. We hear about it every day, right? So we are now going to layer. We haven't solved basic cybersecurity.
No, we haven't.
Right? Now we're going to layer this very powerful decision-making capacity. It's not a tool. We'll come back to that later.
No, it's not. It's an agent.
Capacity. Yeah, it's an agent.
I tell people they're wrong when they say
and we're going to put it on a super vulnerable space. So let's just say that a particular set of agents, whatever you ask them to do, whether it's an economic impact, a health impact, et cetera, if they get really good at this, what we have found in human history is the things that generate wealth also generate competition over them. So if the algorithm itself is an agent that is doing really good things, but it's sitting on a vulnerable origin and a suprastructure that's vulnerable to exploitation, you're going to see it. So you saw just a week or so ago, Anthropic had a case with Claude, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit. But so that's the one bucket.
Yes.
That this is technically vulnerable space.
Yes.
And now we're going to put even more capacity on top of that, more responsibility. That's worrisome to me.
Yes.
Because we haven't solved the basic cybersecurity problems. Now, this move to cyber persistence, which is the work that we've done here at University of Cincinnati, and that I went to US Cybercom on loan from the university and helped develop this with two colleagues from the command, Emily Goldman and Mike Fishkeller. And that theory helped create a paradigm shift away from deterrence, a reactive, threat-based coercion model to, hey, as you said, I think quoting me, that threats don't ask for permission. It's a continuous space of challenge, and therefore the only way we secure the space is if you can anticipate exploitation before it occurs.
Yes.
So it's about initiative persistence is what we argue. Do you have the initiative? The second piece, so that's where I worry about the security stuff, because we have not seized the initiative sufficiently in.
And I want to come back
cyber.
to that too, and deep dive. Go to your second point. Then I want to talk about
so
that.
We've got that issue still hanging for us, right? The second, though, is I think we've been applying the wrong paradigm. So we need another paradigm shift with regard to, and you touched on it. I'm in the camp that this is not a tool that you employ to use, right? This is actually a decision-making capacity.
Absolutely it is.
And if you understand decision-making as a loop of what we call the OODA loop, right? You observe, you orient, you decide, which is to prioritize, and then you
observe,
act.
orient,
decide,
then act. Okay.
Right? And we do that as humans, like just in this loop continuously. And as soon as we act, we observe what came out of that action. We orient ourselves to that new observation. We prioritize what we should do. So right now, your listeners are sitting back and they've been observing us. They're oriented. Now they'll have to decide whether this is sufficient for them to keep listening to us.
Right.
Right.
Hopefully you keep listening.
Yeah. So I'll listen a little bit more. So then they reorient, right, to listen more. Okay. So we're doing this unconsciously all the time.
Sure.
These algorithms have the capacity to do all of those functions, right? So I can collect data, observe.
Yes.
I can have the algorithm collect that data and analyze it. That's the orient. Right? I can take it, it can collect, analyze, and prioritize. That's the decide. And then I could have it collect, analyze, prioritize, and act. What people call an autonomous vehicle, I'd prefer to call an AI chauffeured vehicle, right? Because it's an agent, it's a
Yes.
chauffeur. It's
Yes.
just, it's a piece of code chauffeuring you rather than a human.
Correct.
Who doesn't like to get chauffeured in a car? Right? We pay extra
Right.
money for that. So that's a model in which the algorithm has been given the whole enchilada.
Correct.
It's going to do everything.
Correct.
We can put it in very specific parameters to do that. But here's the key, Rob, and this is where I think the conversation's going to go. And this gets back to your, all the way down to the parent level. What role and responsibility do you want to give this algorithmic agent?
Mm.
And that's where human agency comes back into this.
Yeah.
I can decide that I want it to help collect information for my kids' homework, but I'm going to set the parameter that it's not writing it for you.
Yes.
So therefore, you got to take this information. It saves you time in collecting the information, but now you're on your own, right?
Yep.
I may be in a business where I say, collect this and analyze it for me. I'm going to be the one that prioritizes based on my human intervention, right?
Right.
And thinking about the information that's in front of me. Or I might say, hey, prioritize this for me, but I'm going to wind up being the act. I'm going to be the one that makes that final action to make the decision. We have this human agency in our relationship with the algorithm. And so my second big concern is that we keep thinking about this as another tool, another piece of software.
It's definitely not. It's an agent that can reason
agent
decide.
that's going to but we get still, hopefully, right? We're in a situation where we get to decide where its role and responsibility becomes.
That's the hope.
If we adopt that framework, that's my paradigm shift for AI. Then we get to accountability.
Yes.
So
Before
if you want to riff on Anthropic, that's the big issue. There's
before you
no
go
accountability.
there, before you go there, I want to talk about Anthropic and bring up their side, but also kind of challenge part of what you said. And just because I believe just having just a full conversation. So let's go through the Anthropic, which obviously was a security failure. Anthropic's response is they were able to use AI to figure out what AI was doing. This is what they said, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I read the report.
Yeah. And then to their defense, they tend to be the most transparent with their AI, with their policy. Like, I know what their policy is. They have a constitution. They work to root it, to root their agents in their policy. And just to explain to the listeners, and I'll just try to do it at a very, very low level. This is why we tell people, when you deal with models, you can't rely on the model for your security. Right. And so the model did have safeguards, but what happened is they were individual kind of agents that were doing seemingly harmless things, but the orchestration, and that just means the coordination of the agents, happened outside of that, and then they did the harmful things. I think the challenge with some of what you said is that, yes, there was harm there. Chinese actors it's been pretty well substantiated that it was a state-sponsored attack. And we don't know all of the big attacks that they made, but there were big attacks. Why it's so, I think, concerning is that 90% of the actual work for attacking these targets was done by agents. 90%.
Yeah.
Right. Which only 10% of the work was done by humans. So I think what this portends for the future is that this is going to be democratized and be easier for people to do. It won't even have to be state-sponsored. It could be a small group of people over time attacking systems. I believe the challenge is this, and I agree with what you're saying. I think the challenge is that if we have to both become AI digitally literate, that's what our parents have to do. We also have to use AI within our systems, because AI is attacking our systems. And so, like, how do we balance? My question is, how do we balance that? Because I agree with you to a point, but it's like that cat's been released out of the bag probably 10 years ago. So how do we protect ourselves while still remaining in control? Like, I feel like that's the tough balance we haven't figured out.
Yeah. So this is where, again, I think the reason why I'm proposing this responsibility, roles and responsibility model is it gives people the opportunity to think through uh, more in a terrestrial kind of context.
Yeah.
Like if you and I are right that this is about agency, we've been dealing with agency for all of human history. It's called human agency.
Yeah.
And we've built rules and regulations around those agents. Just because it's code, we don't necessarily have to change that approach. So for before we go to the Anthropic, let me just stay with that car example.
Sure.
So we built this licensure model that says, well, over time we realized you got to be of a certain age to drive a car. And you got to go and do all of this testing. And it's pretty standard. And then there's these standard tests you have to pass, right? And then you get a license to operate that vehicle.
Yep.
So a roles and responsibilities model would say, for AI chauffeurs, we need to license them.
Yeah. And
so that would say that I would need to know how the AI was educated. Stop talking about data, training on data and stuff like that. We're educating the agent.
Yes.
Right. So if you want me to trust to get behind in the back seat of that algorithmic chauffeur, why is that a good chauffeur? Well, I can't go and test every single one as an individual user. So there's going to be a whole new market for licensing algorithms in actors.
Yes.
So on the medical side, why should I trust a AI nurse practitioner? Who's going to license them? That's the way I think we need to start to think about
who's going to
this.
license them? What's the audit going to be like? How do we
and
verify?
Why do we do that? It's back to just basic trust.
I mean,
right? So when I walk into my doctor's office, why do they still have their diplomas up on the wall? They have their diplomas on the wall as a legitimizing function to make you relax that somebody is credentialed me, right? That I went to this school. And, as you know, not everybody looks at schools the same way. We suggest there's elite schools, there's research universities like UC, different types of teaching schools. So I affiliate with them because they legitimize me.
Right.
I think we can apply the same model to algorithmic agencies, and that's a whole new market, and that's a growth area.
Yeah.
Right. To try to build that trust. So when we get to Claude being used by a foreign intelligence agency, what does a roles and responsibilities model illuminate for me?
Right.
Well, if an Anthropic employee had engaged during their workday,
right,
had engaged in the breaches of other people's systems on behalf of a foreign entity, they would be fired. They would be prosecuted under two laws, the Computer Fraud Act and the Foreign Espionage Act.
Right.
And they'd go to jail, right? If I was a human agent doing that exact thing. So the question then becomes, how do you put Claude in jail? Right? Because Claude, now in this case, it wasn't total autonomy.
Right.
But it portends, as you said, where we're going.
Yes.
Right. So eventually, and right now, I give Anthropic a lot of cred for being open, right?
Yeah.
That these are breaches, et cetera, et cetera. But it was also like the shrug emoji.
Yeah.
It was like, well,
it's like, well, it happens. Like, somebody gets murdered every now and then. Things happen.
So these other systems got breached.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Right. This is a problem, Rob.
Right.
Because if we end with just the shrug emoji, if I'm sitting in another, let's just say Beijing, and I decide, well, that worked. Like, why would I risk human agents
That's exactly
infiltrate, spy, and that way. Let me keep using that stuff.
That's exactly what is going to happen.
Right.
100%.
So where's the accountability? Now, let me just run with this as a little crazy thought, right? But so Claude was not designed by Anthropic. It was birthed by Anthropic. If we want to really go full on that these things are agents, right? Then these aren't developed tools. These are decision makers.
Yeah.
Right. So they're creating this decision making. Now, is there a parental responsibility?
Well, but before you get
we have a whole set of laws about that.
Before you get to parental responsibilities, I think the biggest challenge is, and what you're getting to is, there needs to be universal policy for these things, because
we have to start to get to it.
Because if we're not, like, Anthropic would say, we've been transparent with everything that we're doing. Meta won't even release its policy.
Yeah, and let's be fair, right? Like, we're talking about them because they went public.
Because they went public, right? And I'm not saying they don't deserve accountability. They do.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, like, all of these folks are accountable to some level of having these large algorithms that we don't have any level of framework for accountability.
Yeah. Right.
And what you're getting at is absolutely correct, and why people need to understand, like, yes, there needs to be some level of accountability for this. And what
would that be? If we're talking big tech, simple fines, the money's just, it's a drop in the bucket most of the time. So let's just play this one out. And again, I'm not recommending this. I'm just saying, if you adopt a roles and responsibilities model as you look at this tech, all of a sudden your brain starts to think in these terms. Like, okay, well, Claude went and did something illegal. A human would go to jail. What's the equivalent of putting Claude in jail? Well, it's probably saying that version of Claude should get off the market.
Yeah.
That sounds radical, right?
But that's we're here for disruption.
Yeah. So if you had that model, now you have a huge incentive for the company to go fix it.
Yes.
Not at the margins, but go and fix it. Right?
Yep.
And these companies are great innovators. They have the capacity. They always will adjust to market parameters. Your refrigerator has more safety and security regulations on it than your operating system on your computer.
Oh, that's a line.
Okay. Last time I checked, people are still buying refrigerators.
Yes.
Right? Because we regulated it to make it safer, didn't kill that industry.
No.
It didn't kill the ability to sell. So this idea that even some parameters about safety and security that the tech has to fit into is somehow going to kill off innovation. There's no economic sector in human history that's been that fragile.
No, there's not.
And I don't think tech is that fragile.
It's not.
I actually have super faith in how clever we can be. And if we say, you know what, and this is go back to your mom and dad with their kid and looking at it. Yeah, I'd rather have these things that are a little safer and a little more secure. Could we do that? We could absolutely do that if we had to. And that's where the interface between government, democratic government, and the market has always existed.
Right.
And so, right now, this whole idea of just a bottom-up approach. So what's happening, we have had no central legislation, even on the broadest parameters of safety and security in cyber and or specific to AI.
Right.
I think 2 years ago was the last time I checked. There were 62 bills in Congress that had AI in some aspect in the bill.
Right.
Not a single one of them got passed. Right. What's happened is that we have a whole bunch of states that have been passing AI-based legislation. Some of which is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Emphasizing stuff like what you talked about earlier about deep fakes. Like, do I own my personhood?
Sure.
What's my digital personhood?
Yeah.
What if you robocall using my voice? Like,
Exactly.
what do I have an ability to sue you for doing that? The states are doing this. The problem with that, Rob, though, is we're going to have a patchwork
and it's going to be all over the
and
place.
industry. So I think there's a moment with the states being disruptors or agitators, I will, on the policy side, that the solution set is, yeah, we probably shouldn't have the states filling this gap. We should have, I
It
think
should
you
be
used the
federal.
word universal,
Yes.
right? Big tech and little tech should prefer that. You'd rather follow one law
Yes.
than 50 different laws. So could we come to a condominium, right? This is a moment where we, with AI right now, we can get out in front of this
Right.
and have some very light touch, basic parameters of guardrails of, hey, we need you guys to prioritize safety.
Exactly.
And we need you to prioritize security. Those
Yep.
are two different things, but they can do it. Every other industry has done it. My concern is that there's legislation to kill off the state
all type of
legislation with no plan to fill that gap.
I think that's intentional. But
So I'm all in on that. It's not the right solution to have 50 answers, but we have to have an answer.
we have to have an answer, and we have to have a framework and agreement for what we want to be as society with this technology. I want to get to a few because I know we're wrapping on time.
Yeah.
A few just and quickly kind of answer some of these and a few rapid fire. You're an educator.
Mhm.
How does education change now with the advent of AI, and what should never change?
So what should never change, and this is going to sound like a faculty member from arts and sciences, it's all about critical thinking.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think there's one thing that everybody can agree on. The next 5 to 10 to 15 years are going to be massively fluid. Like, we don't know where this tech is going to ultimately take society. So we've got a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
It's not sufficient to say to a student, come and spend all this money and learn this degree, become specialized in something, and then good luck, we're throwing you out into this uncertain world.
Yes.
So I think as educators, we need to spend more time discerning through our own specializations, how do I position you to deal with uncertainty?
Yes.
And that to me is the most critical thing. People who can adjust somewhat on the fly.
Yes.
Again, this goes back to my compressed time assumption. It's fluid, it's change, but it is compressed change. You're going to have to be able to adapt and move pretty quickly. So there are skill sets in the way we think and the way we look at information. This goes all the way back to your truth questions. How do we get people to reflect when reflection requires time in an environment that's compressing time?
Yes.
That's the nutshell. But I think as educators, we need to spend more time on that.
Yes.
Than thinking about 4-year degree, major pathways. And I know this is maybe heretical, but we need more non-traditional pathways. It may be that you come to the university and spend 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. And there should be certification, legitimization, reward for that. We have associate degrees that do that, but I think we need to think out of the box even more about that. But that you easily come back into the university.
Right. Exactly.
So if you go out into the workplace for 2 years and say, I've gained that experience, now I want to go and get more education. I need you seamlessly coming back into our institution.
And Richard,
I don't need you to go through applications again. I don't need you to go through fees again to get in. We've got to make this a seamless and fluid space.
And I think with that, there's also, you said it right about being a critical thinker. I often talk about artificial intelligence as humans should think of it as artistic intelligence, meaning you are dancing with the algorithms, but you're not defaulting to them. Yeah. You need to learn how to, you can use it to retrieve information, outline information, but using it as your source of decision-making, right, will not only erode your brain, but it will also make it less effective. Like, because we are at the time where we have to now, it's not just about what I think does change, I would say, is there is no longer a need to simply memorize a lot of information, right? You have to actually learn the concepts and connect it, which is theoretical. Actually, it's harder, right? Because memorizing things are easy, but we've been taught over years and years, because we've had to do this as humans. We've had information processors to memorize information. I think it is important to know some things and memorize some things, but it's going to be more important to know how to, when you get that information, because you can retrieve the information now without any effort.
Right.
What do you make of this information?
So
how do you connect multiple points together and see something new? That's
right.
going to be the challenge that you talk about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, you know, when you look at a university, and it's not just UC, around the world, I had the privilege of working at Oxford over in England years ago. And you walk past buildings that were built in 1318 as the cornerstone, right? That's a long time ago.
Yes.
Oxford is operating pretty close to the way it operated in 1318.
Yeah.
Like, we're still medieval feudal. And, you know, we've got our specializations. We call them colleges, majors, right? We're very segmented. We're in a world in which interconnectedness is now the structural organizing principle. That's what cyberspace is.
There it is.
The work that I've done is that puts you in constant contact with everybody.
Yeah.
Not episodic contact, not over the horizon contact, right? But constant contact.
All right.
That's that we have to get people to we have to shift our way of teaching, right? And the product of teaching, again, is more about adaptive thinking. How do we use these things? So there's going to be a whole bunch of human things that we're out of the loop on.
Yes.
Because the algorithm and sensors, and there's when we use the term algorithm, right? It's like
a big
one
term.
piece of But you know, the real linkage is taking that compute power, tying it to sensors. So I swallow a pill, and it's diagnostically able to give the doctor a read on everything that's happening to me entirely in my body. We're terrible at telling doctors what hurts us.
Yes, we are.
When we go in, it becomes this translation problem, right? So a lot of health issues are that first moment where we can't explain what's going on, and the doctor has to like go through hieroglyphics to figure it out.
Yeah.
So if I can swallow a sensor and have it in me for a couple days, and then it gives them entire diagnostic, I've solved that problem.
Yeah.
So take me out of the loop, because I don't explain my health problems well enough.
Right.
But that doctor, do we want him out of the loop?
No.
So we have to figure out what on the loop looks like.
Yeah.
Where that interface between the human, in this case, doctor, and this AI assistant that has read more medical journal articles about my my problem than the doctor ever will, can observe cases, more cases than that doctor ever did. So in a way, that algorithmic assistant is more expert than the doctor. But we're still going to trust that human.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to have to figure out how you leverage that.
Right.
And the doctor doesn't lose their skills of thinking.
So I'm going to wrap on this question.
That's the on loop.
That's the on loop.
Yeah.
And in one sentence, how do we keep humans in the on loop?
We have to assert ourselves. Right now, we are way too passive.
We are.
We are just letting the tech run, and we're not talking to our representatives who don't understand it. We don't understand it. That's okay. You can understand roles and responsibilities, right? So let's start talking about it in roles and responsibilities. Do I want that algorithm to do this? Okay, why? What does that make it better? I actually want a world where they're driving cars, because we're really crappy at driving cars. We kill 47,000 Americans a year driving cars. What if we just cut that? They don't need to be perfect. What if we cut that at half? That's 20,000 people who are still living, who all of a sudden produce something in society that we would have lost as a society, right? Because they were killed in a car accident. So if I can cut car accidents by 50% by connecting these sensors and these algorithms, let's do that. right? But let's figure out the public policy
Absolutely.
that gets us there.
I agree.
And you can apply that to all these different functionalities.
Agreed. Richard Harknett, it was great having you on the show. Definitely, we could have had this go on a lot longer.
Yeah.
We appreciate all you've done for really the world, the University of Cincinnati. We're here, of course, at 1819. And as always, keep disrupting.